Hi, I'm Deb Bunnell. I'm going to help you get started with Scratchboard. Scratchboard is an India ink coating on a thick paper or a very thin board that when you scratch it away, bright white is revealed in a very clean way. You can get lots of details with this medium. The two kinds of marks you will mostly make are dots and lines. The dots are called stippling and the lines are called hatching. When you cross the lines, it's called cross-hatching. You can even use a combination of these two to make a huge variety of textures. We only scratch the surface with this word here. I like to make my Christmas cards in Scratchboard. This is my dog helping Santa launch his sleigh. Animals are really fun to do because it's just natural to scratch away fur and feathers, and even if you like reptiles, scales, anything with a texture is wonderful in Scratchboard. Here's a really fluffy dog and my son. I find humans more challenging than animals because of the smooth skin. I used cross-hatching to do his skin. You could use stippling too to do it, or a combination. But it worked out pretty well for me. I'll show you closer up what the hand and the face look like. Close-up view of how many different directions I went with the cross-hatching. Earlier, one of the first people I tried, I didn't do quite as much cross-hatching, and this is a much smaller face than that one. It's about a third of the size. But it shows one of the really cool things that Scratchboard is good at, and that is dramatic lighting effects. You have this velvety dark black and the bright white, and you can get a lot of drama out of that if you have some good lighting. The lighting on this one came from that star on the Christmas tree, and it just goes into all the background with a soft gradation to a darker gray by the time it gets to the top. If you have a good detailed photograph of your animal, you can really get into the wrinkles and folds and the changes in direction of the hair, and it just makes it more interesting and even more amazing to look at. You can tell the different lengths of the hair, you can tell the dog's markings or the animal's markings, and all the little folds on their skin where the muzzle's pressing against the ground while they're sleeping. All kinds of fun detail. Let's do a couple exercises to get you used to making marks on the Scratchboard. First, we're going to do 2 value scales. You're going to use your ruler to mark off 1-inch sections of 5 rectangles. We're going to do shorter rectangles on top for the stippling and longer ones, almost squares, for the cross-hatching, and go from almost white all the way to black. So you're really only doing 4 because black is already there. There goes the last almost white. And this is what the finished product looks like. For my hatching and cross-hatching, I use shorter strokes, but you could use longer strokes that go all the way across the rectangle. And hatching can even be done with curved lines. They don't have to be perfectly straight. The next thing we're going to do, though, is shading a sphere. If you can shade a sphere, you can shade any rounded object. So put a highlight in where the light hits it, and then we're going to do a gradation all the way to a darker side opposite the highlight. And instead of having the shadow all the way at the edge of the sphere, make a crescent near the edge, as if light is still being picked up by the very edge of the sphere. Now, I was not satisfied with this. I took too much off, so I'm going to cheat and use some Sharpie. Here we go, making that edge darker and making more of a gradation from the light side to the dark side, because I want this to look like what you should be aiming for. I still didn't like the highlight on this. Got a little carried away. I made it smaller. There. I'll accept that. Here's my photograph that I'm going to start a Scratchboard of. And before I do anything on the actual Scratchboard, I'm going to do a couple trials, a couple samples of one of the hardest areas, and I think that is the eye. So I'm winging it here. I didn't trace this. I'm just taking my best stab at proportions. Here I'm tracing it. I'm doing it a second time. Get the proportions perfect so I can just worry about the values. And I'll show you the results. First time I got proportions a little bit off. Here's the photograph. Because of the angle, the nose is much bigger than I would have thought. So the first one I got the nose a little too small, but the second one I got better at the shading and everything too. So it's worth doing a couple trials before you start the actual thing. You will need your photograph, you will need your Scratchboard, and either carbon paper or graphite paper. This is graphite paper here, and it will give you a gray outline. You put it black side down against the Scratchboard, put the photo on top, tape it. To trace your photo, use a 2H or harder pencil, or you can even use a ballpoint pen. If you use a ballpoint pen, it shows you where you've been. And press fairly hard. The result will be gray on black or even black on black. But that's good. You don't want it to show up very bright. And instead of making a straight line where the forms are, if this is a fluffy animal, go with the shape of the hair and the length of the hair. That will give you a better idea. And just outline landmarks that you need to see. You'll need to see where any markings are and any shadows. And I'm just going to do a little bit. I am off the image area. Okay. Here's her other ear. And if it's smooth, you can outline it in a straight line. But be sure to get where there's a change of value. The rim of her ear is lighter. Any subtle change of value you can see is going to help define the animal in the finished product. Now this picture could be more detailed. I know this dog pretty well, so I know how her fur goes, but it isn't really showing exact texture of fur. So hopefully your picture shows what you need. I'm just going to do that much and then show you how to start on your Scratchboard. Just send that down there. Take off the carbon paper or graphite paper, and here you can kind of see this is graphite paper, and it leaves a black image. I mean a gray on black. And if it were carbon paper, it would leave black on black, which is even a little harder to see. Now this is the first thing you need to know about starting to scratch. Don't scratch a firm line anywhere, unless it really is a firm line, like an animal's whiskers or something. But if the line ends in fur, you will be doing yourself a favor to outline it in stippling. Or if you actually know which direction the hairs are going on the outline, you can just put in the hairs, or at least some of them, to give you an idea where you're going. And just go slowly when you're building up your light colors. Keep referring back to your photograph and don't get too light too fast, because once you take it away, you can't really put it back. I know we could cheat and use Sharpie, but usually you can tell if Sharpie's been used, and it looks better if it's totally Scratchboard. So that's how I would proceed to outline the whole thing. Slowly work up to your lightest parts, and I tend to go for the eyes first after I outline the whole thing, and then you have those eyes staring at you and you really want to do a nice job on the rest of the animal. I hope you have fun.